Welcome into WarUp on the WPIAL. Greg Warnock alongside Jeff Upson. And Jeff, we have to apologize to our fans. We didn't get a chance to bring in a show last week, and it's mainly because I think you were so distraught by one, the Steelers losing, and two, Mike Tomlin resigning.
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty down bad about Mike Tomlin resigning. It's just a real shame. Uh, I told you I actually went to the playoff game thanks to my good friend, one of my best friends, Paul Myers. We spent the weekend at Midwinter Mayhem, and for my birthday, he got me tickets to the playoff game with himself, and it was a great experience. But the Steelers just absolutely weren't good. So yeah, it was a rough week for me, especially losing Coach T like that. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do without him. I saw Danny Smith left too. I'm not sure he's gonna be doing a lot of bubblegum chewing down in Tampa Bay. So good luck to him. But yeah, the Steelers, they need a whole revamp. So I feel like every show it's started out as a kind of a bitch session about the Steelers. So let's keep that going. Why don't we keep that going?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns now, right? So we'll see who they end up with a coach, and
They will pick the
will
wrong
that
coach.
person be?
They will hire the wrong coach.
You think so, huh?
I mean, I know so. It's Art Rooney's DNA to make the wrong decisions. Yeah, I mean, they'll probably go with a defensive minded person, Flores maybe. I don't know. They probably won't go with someone offensively minded, but even though they should. So, but they need a quarterback. So we'll see what happens there. I'm a Will Howard fan. I think he's a good guy, but he's never thrown a pass in the NFL. So it's hard to say what he's going to be like. Yeah, I don't know. But hey, we made it to the playoffs. That's all that matters, right?
Well, you could bring Aaron Rodgers back if you hire Mike McCarthy. That's
Oh
probably
my
the
God,
only reason
yeah,
you
that
consider
exactly.
Mike
That
McCarthy.
that would be something the Steelers would do. So
No doubt about it. The other thing that I think is bringing you down a little bit, there's no Christmas tree behind me. I think that's usually what brightens your spirits, but now it's just the
true.
dreary days of
It's frigid.
wrestling
It's
season.
frigid out there, man. But we got some good wrestling coming up this weekend. We're excited about this weekend. This is like our final like hurrah for individual tournaments before the team postseason and the individual postseason. So we're actually streaming 3 tournaments this weekend. We're streaming the Fred Bell tournament at Grove City, the Coal Cracker, which is at Lehighton, Jim Thorpe. We're also streaming the Ultimate Warrior up at West Branch. So we're gonna have a lot of really good wrestling this weekend on Rockfin via PA Power Wrestling. So we're excited about that. But then we get right into the dual championships, right? I mean, District 1 has already started. Well, their bracket's already out. They're going to be starting wrestling this week in their district duels. The brackets, well, I guess, when will they do the seeding for the WPIL, Greg?
Those should come out on Thursday.
Thursday, right? Typically Thursday. Um,
Yep.
but we got a lot of really good wrestling this week, right? I mean, the biggest match in the state this week is going to be Norwin versus Franklin Regional tomorrow night at Franklin Regional. That's by far has some of the biggest implications, not only in the WPIAL, but also the state. So I'm really looking forward to that. We also have Trinity and Cannon Mac, which I think is going to be a really good match. And we're going to preview both of those. But we also had the Allegheny County Tournament to recap as well.
Yeah, we had some good wrestling this past weekend. Definitely want to hit on that first before we get into the previews of those dual meets as well as the upcoming weekend tournament action. So let's start with the Allegheny County, since you mentioned that first, Jeff. And the team race side of things came down to the wire, but it was a win for North Allegheny. They beat Moon by 2 points, 262.5 to 260.5. So Moon, been talking about how impressive their season has been thus far, and obviously pushing North Allegheny in the team side of things. You look at the individual results, and you look at the first couple of weight classes. Bryce Thomas of Moon was a 9-1 winner over Joe Sinian of North Allegheny. Zach Rehack of TJ, 7-1 over Shamil Islamov of Baldwin. And Preston Bubash of Elizabeth Forward, overtime winner over Bruce Anderchak of Quaker Valley.
Yeah, and you had talked about Moon and how good they have been, and look at 107 as an example. They had two guys finish in the top five. Bryce Thomas won it, and Tristan Eskin from Moon finished in fifth place. So that's pretty impressive there. Obviously, Bryce Thomas is the only one scoring team points, but Bryce Thomas continues to show why he's one of the top guys in the WPIAL and the region, because he just came out and dominated basically everybody he wrestled there, beating a tough Joey Simon from North Allegheny in the finals. You also talked about 114. 114 was a little bit of a mess. You had Islamov, who was unseeded, but you had Javion Chambers from Highlands, who was a returning PIAA state medalist. Islamov beat him 7-5. Islamov's a freshman, right? His older brother Ramil, who we know from his days at Baldwin, he's now at West Virginia University. He ends up making the finals there. The match that I really wanted to see was Rehack versus Bennett Ferraro from Pine Richland. That ended up being a 5-0 decision for Rehack. Rehack ends up winning that over Islamov, but I think the top three here, all three of them can certainly battle, not only in the WPIAL but also in the region, with Chambers finishing in fourth place. So I thought that was a really good weight class. I thought it kind of sorted things out, because Islamov, we haven't seen him really against some of those top tier guys. Baldwin hasn't wrestled a lot of big tournaments. They wrestled a couple out of state where we got to see him, but not really get to see where the pecking order is yet. Unlike 121, where we know Preston Bubash and Bruce Anderchak, they're always going to bring it, and I'm not surprised that it went to overtime there. I will say Robert Cordova of TJ had a really good win over Schomburg from North Allegheny. I thought that was a very good win for him. Schomburg's a guy who I feel like has been very good for a long time, and Cordova was able to come out and get a victory there. So yeah, it was a good first couple weights there at the Allegheny County.
Yeah, no doubt about it. That 114 in particular, seeing how Islamov was able to do with a couple of stud wrestlers, shows where 14 could be as far as in the WPIAL. You look at some other winners. Evan Sala, Mount Lebanon, was a winner at 127. Cale Yannick of Moon over Gus Stediford of North Allegheny, 12-6 at 33. Peter Leventis of South Fayette was a champ at 39. Ian Buccelli of Bethel Park was a winner at 45.
Yeah, and there was a couple weird weights here. 27 was one of them, because Austin Kasanovic of Avonworth was the top seed, and Jacob LeBrier from TJ beat him I think it was the round of 16. He beat him 14-12. So that was a pretty big upset early on. And that kind of opened up the bracket a little bit. LaShawn Haley from West Mifflin beats LeBrier 4-3 in the semifinals, setting up that matchup with Sala. Sala was also unseeded. I mean, it was definitely, like I said, a little bit weird. Sala beat Rohaley of North Hills, who's recently down to 127 from 133. So this was kind of all over the place. Kazanovic ends up finishing in seventh place. You had Miles Hoover, a freshman from North Allegheny, placed fifth there. So this was sort of, again, a little bit all over the place. 133, though, Cale Yannick, again, I think is just like Bryce Thomas, solidifying himself as one of the top guys in the WPIAL and the region. He beats Stediford, who has looked really good this year, so beats him 12-6. I like that weight class. 39, maybe not the deepest of weight class, was with Leventis winning that 8-0 over Washington from Gateway, but there certainly wasn't as much depth there as some of the other weights. You had mentioned Buccelli from Bethel Park. I was very impressed with him. From the fifth seeded spot, he beat Chacon from Montour 13-9 in the semifinals. Haynes beat Ragati from Moon. It was a good weight class, but Buccelli, I think, really separated himself from the rest of the pack here.
No doubt about it. Griffin Reed of North Allegheny was your champ at 152 over Owen Campbell of Plum, 7-2. Cole Gibbons of Mount Lebanon. Majors, Matt Dana of Quaker Valley, 10-2 at 160. Zach LeBrier of TJ, a 9-1 winner over Liam Costa of Moon at 172.
Yeah, and before we talk about 172, 52, Griffin Reed, again, solidifying himself as a top guy here at 152, beats Owen Campbell, a tough Owen Campbell. The guy who I wanted to see, Rook Smith, the returning state medalist for Montour, he had to default in the semifinals to Campbell, so that's one I really wanted to see. Logan Cruel from Avonworth has wrestled really well. He's just a freshman, and he's a freshman up at 152, but he's already wrestling very, very good. So I was impressed with him where he finished. Matt Dana losing to Cole Gibbons, not super surprising. Cole Gibbons, I think, is one of those guys, like Michael Lawrence from Chartiers Valley. He's just been around for a long time. He's been a varsity starter for 4 years now. He's had a lot of wins and some losses to his credit. So I wasn't surprised to see that he came out and beat Matt Dana the way he did. The one thing that I was surprised about was how good Zach LeBrier looked. And LeBrier is down to 172 for the first time in 3 years. He ends up majoring a very tough Liam Costa from Moon in the finals 9-1. And that's just one piece of the puzzle. He teched Fald, the third seed, and one of the top 20 guys in the state, Carter Morvay from North Hills. He teched him 16-3 in the semifinals. So LeBrier, and I just saw LeBrier at Midwinter Mayhem place at 189 pounds, which his descent had already started. LeBrier is going to be a problem at 172 pounds, not only in the WPIAL, but in the state. I'm excited to see him down at 172. Clearly, the weight cut's not a huge deal for him because he just came out and absolutely dominated the field. And it was a tough field. You had Liam Costa, you had Morvay, you had Michael Lawrence, and Caden Wills from West Mifflin. These are all guys that were ranked in the state coming into this weekend. So that was a huge performance by him.
189, Nez Green of Pittsburgh Central Catholic was your champ. 215, Khalil Rizapur of Moon was your winner, and Braden McConnell of North Allegheny, your winner at 285.
Yeah, kind of went chalk here, right? Olszewski from Moon ended up losing in the semifinals, and then Green ends up winning that. Not super surprising. Again, some of these guys are state ranked guys. And Moon getting a win from Razorpur, I was impressed by that because Joseph Geller from Fox Chapel was the top seed, loses to Healy from North Hills. Again, we talked about Moon and how strong of a lineup they have. We always talk about Bryce Thomas and Liam Costa, and Cale Yannick, but you look at guys like Razorpur and you're saying, okay, this is a complete team now. And McConnell, no real surprise there that he dominated the field. It wasn't surprising. The thing that was surprising to me was Plum had two guys finish in the top five, with Grisales and Rupert finishing top five. So it's a shame when you have two quality guys like that and you can't get them both in a lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Especially at that weight, you can't bump them around at that point. So makes it challenging for sure. Outside of the Allegheny County Championships, we also had Escape the Rock this past weekend, and obviously another really high-end tournament, a lot of national teams there, Jeff. But the WPIAL did have a couple of schools and a couple of finalists as well. Kai Vioma of Connellsville was a second-place finisher at 145. Elijah Brown of Bell Vernon, he was a champion at 215 pounds. Feel free to let me know if I missed somebody, but those were the two WPIAL finalists that I saw.
Yeah, and so the Escape to Rock this year was a little bit weird. So it's typically a Saturday and Sunday at Council Rock South High School. There was a snowstorm, a pretty bad one, supposedly predicted for Sunday. So what they ended up doing was condensing it down to one day, which to have that big of a tournament and that high level of a tournament completed in one day is an impressive feat in itself. But what that did was you had to make the quarterfinals in order to wrestle back. So they started the wrestlebacks, but then they stopped. So there was a lot of guys that went 1-1. They lost one, they won one. But you had to make the quarterfinals in order to wrestle back. So there was a lot of no contest. Certainly not the I'm sure Ed Evans and his team there didn't want it to go that way, but they had to adjust. So you may see some guys that could have gotten on the podium that didn't have a chance to wrestle back, depending on when they lost in the championship round. But it was interesting how that panned out. Tommy Gretz placed 6th at 121. That was a really good weight class. You had Nico Emili from Bethlehem Catholic, who he has battled back and forth. He was there as well. Nolan Rice, I thought, had a phenomenal weekend, finishing in 5th place. Nolan Rice is a guy who probably doesn't get as much credit as he should, being a state medalist, but he finished in 5th place, beat Jordan Magnetti, also beat Zane Kraus. So, and he finished ahead of a state champion in Chase Williams, state champion last year at 107 pounds. He finished ahead of him, who was in 8th place. So I thought 2 of those guys with Gretz and Rice, I thought both those guys wrestled really well. You had mentioned Kai Vielma. Kai Vielma had a good tournament because I don't think he looked his best at Powerade. Not saying he had a bad Powerade. I just don't think he looked nearly as good as he could have been. He actually beat his future teammate in Grayson Music of Bishop McDevitt. He beat him 5-1. Both those guys are committed to Stanford. He beat him in the quarterfinals. Music was the 3rd seed. He ends up making it to the finals after Matty O'Neill gets beat by DePaul, and then Vielma beats DePaul. So, and he wrestles DeCraker from Lake Highland Prep very close. That was a good 4-2 match there for him. So, it was certainly interesting how it all panned out. The OW, and this is no surprise, was Elijah Brown. If you look at Elijah Brown and what he did, he absolutely dominated. He completely ripped apart the field here. Fall in 1 minute, fall in a minute 28, a fall in 54 seconds, a tech fall in a minute 48, in the finals, a fall in 46 seconds. This is one of the best tournaments in the nation, and he absolutely obliterated everybody that he wrestled. I mean, he didn't make it out of the first period. The longest time he wrestled was in the semifinals against Tyler Palumbo from CBA, who's nationally ranked, by the way. He teched him 16-0 in a minute 48. So I don't know what it is about Elijah Brown, but he turned it on. He's now the number 1 ranked guy again in the state after he beats Kuba Roskowski. He hadn't lost to Roskowski, but Roskowski had beat Kendall Orr, and Kendall Orr had beaten Elijah Brown. So you're certainly kind of playing into that a little bit. But Elijah Brown was absolutely incredible. 215 is going to be a fun weight. I'm excited to see 215 come Hershey.
Yeah, and we'll see it for 2 weeks, right, as well, for the West region as well. So these guys will all beat each other up a little bit. Speaking of the team side, as we start to transition, always one of the best weekends is the Ultimate Duels, where Burrell participates, as well as Brookville, Chestnut Ridge, Penn Trafford heads out there, Reynolds and Sagertown. But only a couple of results that we saw from the Burrell side, Jeff, and they did beat Chestnut Ridge 34-29. They did drop a tight one to Reynolds 35-31.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if they just didn't update their results in there yet, because we only have 2 duels in there for them, whereas Reynolds has 5 results in there. So I'm not sure exactly what the mishap there is, but they beat Chestnut Ridge. The Reynolds match was the one that I was certainly interested in seeing, losing to them 35-31. And it's not like anything. There was one big swing match, and that was 45 with Gustis and Crawford. Graydon Gustis from Reynolds was able to get an 11-9 win. That to me was a pretty big. That was a big swing match there for them. Hudson Wolbert from Reynolds did not wrestle. He typically wrestles in like 33 or 39. Logan Stewart got a tech over Carter Thomas. Yeah, there was a couple other matches. Flock versus Martin at 285 could have gone either way. But basically where they needed to get bonus points, they got them. Carl Thomas got a major decision over Nico Lamonte, which was maybe a little surprising that he was able. I had that more as a decision. And Cam Baker being down at 127, you get Stewart off of him. You get him, so you kind of trade Well, actually, you got a fall for Baker and then a tech fall for Stewart. So you're kind of swapping 1 point there. But 45 was the swing match for me. Gustis on Crawford, 11-9. I mean, that can flip around pretty easily, and now we have a potentially a different result in the team final. But beating Chestnut Ridge is no easy task, right? I mean, that was certainly, they certainly had to bring it all against Chestnut Ridge, who had a good weekend, but they definitely took some lumps.
Well, yeah, and the big name, right, was Dom Deputy, returning state champ, dropping a 4-1 decision to Cam Baker. Absolutely huge win for Baker.
Yeah.
And with that match, he wins the duel, right? Because if Deputy wins that, they beat Burrell 32-31. So not only does Baker get the marquee win that he was really looking for, but also gets the dual win as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was huge. On an individual level, Cam Baker, obviously we know how good he is. Being a two-time state medalist, he probably would have been a three-timer, but he got injured last year. Yeah, I mean, he's a guy who, I don't think certainly gets the recognition that he deserves, and maybe that is because he was injured last year. He loses to Deputy earlier this year. At the King of the Mountain, loses him to 4-0, ends up beating him 4-1. I mean, that to me was just a huge turn of, that's a huge result for him. Dom Deputy is one of the best in the nation, not only the state. So to me, that was huge, not only for Cam Baker individually, but also with the team, right? You had a couple other swing matches there. Trendon Wiley and Caden Crawford. Caden Crawford ends up on the wrong side of two very close matches, losing to him 12-9. So, there's some adjustments that can be made for a lot of these teams. But, yeah, that was a huge win for Cam Baker, for sure.
Well, Jeff, we got some exciting matchups coming up this week for the basically a lot of sections coming down to this week. And then obviously trying to figure out who will really be those top 4 seeds in both AA and AAA.
What's your favorite part? We get to look at the standings. This is your favorite. This is literally your Christmas, looking at the section standings.
I should have kept the tree up for this. Come on. What was I thinking? You look at some of the matchups, though, and you highlighted it, right? The biggest one coming potentially with the 1 and 2 seeds in Section 9, Franklin Regional and Norwin. And that one really, I mean, that should at the very least determine who's the number 1 seed.
I would think so. This year has been so bizarre, but I would assume that the winner of Norwin and Franklin Regional tomorrow night is the top seed in the WPIAL, just because of consistency. Norwin's only loss is to Malvern Prep. Franklin Regional is undefeated, so if they win, they're undefeated. There's no reason why they shouldn't be the top seed, right? It's the rest.
Is there any reason why they shouldn't be 1-2, regardless?
I don't know. If Franklin Regional wins, I think again the winner should be the top seed. Does a loser automatically be the second seed? I don't know. I think it depends. It depends. You look at Collinsville. I think Collinsville taking a couple losses, losing the Canamac the way they did, hurts them. Even though Collinsville just had a really good weekend, they beat Gettysburg out of District 3, who is a very, very solid, good team. They're much like Collinsville. They are the District 3 version of Collinsville. A couple state medalists, they have a couple really big names, but they're just solid throughout. They have just, it's hard to escape them. Collinsville beat them. They also beat State College. So you look at Collinsville is a much different team now than they were in December, right? Yeah. With Zach Franks down at 14, you got some other guys in some weights where I think it helps them as a team. I just don't necessarily know if the committee is going to have enough to say Collinsville should be the 2 seed, because Collinsville is going to win out. They have Latrobe tomorrow night. They're going to beat them. So looking at their record and looking at their resume, how if you lose to Canamac beats them head to head, how can you not see Canamac ahead of them, right? So maybe you're right. Maybe you're talking me into Norwin and Franklin Regional being the 1 and 2 by default, almost, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because of everybody beating each other, right? Because
Yeah,
Kiski area has a win over Canamac. Canamac beats Connellsville. Connellsville beats Kiski. So all three have really beaten each other. And then you throw Trinity in the mix, who's going to wrestle, Kiski area. So maybe Trinity is that one team that could maybe, because they only lost by a point to Franklin Regional, right? So
yeah. I mean,
if Franklin Regional wins, maybe Trinity.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't like to look at I don't like to say they only lost by a point, right? There's a lot of things like, I mean, yeah, does it mean they're close? Yes, that means they're close. But at the end of the day, they didn't win, and there were certain things that I don't necessarily think that you can look at the margin of losing and winning as necessarily a determining factor when you're seeding, right? Should Trinity beat Cannon Mac tomorrow, that's going to throw a whole nother wrench into this whole thing, right? Then Trinity is sort of in that position where they're looking like, all right, they're
a 2-3.
They have to be a 2-3, right? They have to be a 2-3, in my opinion. That's a big if, right? I mean, there's going to be a lot of... Now, the good thing is they got Carson Gerba back. He got injured down in West Virginia. He came back recently. That's huge for them. And, I think Trinity matches up well with Canamac. Canamac 7-3 on the year. Trinity's 10-1. Their only loss is to Franklin Regional by a point, right? But this match is going to be huge, right? I think Canamac has a little bit too much, but I'm not counting out Trinity because where Trinity's good, they're really good. I think there's some key matchups. Depending on where Dom Canale goes, him and John Emma, they've traded blows back and forth. Emma's gotten, I believe, the last win over Canale. Gerber coming back, him and maybe Finnegan, maybe Calgaro. It just depends on what they do weight-wise. Is Hartman going to be at 39? Is he going to be at 45? I think Canamac has a little bit... They have a couple more weapons, and they have a little bit more flexibility than Trinity does, so I expect Canamac to win. So let's just say, hypothetically, Canamac beats Trinity. And let's say, hypothetically, Franklin Regional beats Norwin, right? Do you go Franklin Regional 1, Norwin 2, Canamac 3, Collinsville 4? I just don't like... this is just me. I don't like Connellsville being on the same side as this top seed. I think if Norwin or Franklin Regional are the top seed, I don't think it's... Here's the bottom line: they need to do full wrestlebacks or at least wrestlebacks from the quarterfinals on. That is beyond me. So Phil Mary, everybody else, the fact that we don't do wrestlebacks from the quarterfinals on doesn't make sense to me. You're potentially not, because then you're basically saying our seeding is foolproof. Our seeding is good enough that we don't have to do that, right? Which is a little bit, in my opinion, I don't like it. I don't like it. Why not wrestle back through the quarterfinals? To me, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, even District 3 does it, right? And District 3, I mean, although it's a district where I came from, it's not necessarily the ones that are the champions for doing things the right way. The WPIAL is, right? So why wouldn't the WPIAL wrestle teams consolation round from the quarterfinals on? That to me doesn't make sense. So, and again, I think that's you're just saying, well, our seeds are so good that we're going to make sure that we get, we are going to have the top 4 teams represented there, which I guess in theory makes sense, but why not do it? I'm sorry if I went off on a tangent there, Greg, but that's just a bottom line.
Well, and I think we've had this discussion the last few years, right? Where there's usually like 5, 6 teams, and it's like, hey, we kind of know the one, we should know the two, but like, who's that third team that's going to get into the PRWA
But here's
tournament?
the thing, Greg.
Usually,
I don't know if we do know the one or the two. I really don't. Like this year, like I don't know if we truly know the one and twos. Like I mean, you would think that the winner between Norwin and Frank Regional is a clear number one or two, right? On paper, yes, but these guys are so close, and it's all about matchups. It's all about who's healthy. It's all about who can be at what weight, right? There is not I think you really do toss around a lot of these teams in a bag between Canamac, Connellsville, Frank Regional, Norwin, Trinity, North Allegheny. You throw them all around, you toss them around, and I think you can get a different result every time. So this is not the same as the years in past where we had, Waynesburg and Canamac, the two top teams, Waynesburg and Frank Regional, or it's just very different, So why not do it is what and you can't tell me cost, you can't tell me mat space, you can't tell me any of that, because those are called excuses. And if freaking District 3 can figure it out, you're the best district, you claim to be the best district in the state, which is the best state in the nation, figure it out.
that's a shot right there if I ever heard one.
I don't know if it's a shot. It's
yeah,
just it's just the facts. I mean, it's just the facts. Again, I mean, I would be happy to say this to anybody in a very constructive way. That is, what is the harm in wrestling back from the quarterfinals on? Like, tell me, give me a negative reason why you want to do that, right? If you truly want to get the best representatives to the state tournament to get them a chance, right? Wrestle back. I mean, it's like what the Escape the Rock did. I mean, I had people, coaches, parents saying, oh my God, this is BS. Like, we were seeded bad and we lost before the quarterfinals, but we could have wrestled back for 8th. And it's like, all right, I get it. But there's very few arguments that you're going to make that are going to convince me. I'm not going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. I can see why you're not wrestling back from the quarterfinals on. And I'm not even talking about like the round of 16, which District 3 does. P.S. You can still just do the quarterfinals. Like that to me it's a no-brainer, right? I think
the quarters definitely. I can agree with that, because if you can't get into the top 8, then there's no reason to be having a wrestle back as far as the team goes. When you only have 3 teams going on, you look at. I agree with the Franklin Regional Norwin, probably a 1-2 regardless of the result. I'd probably lean towards Connellsville getting the 3, and the reason why I say that is because they had the earliest loss. It's kind of like, hey, if you're going to lose early.
Yeah.
And Connellsville lost early, where to your point, they didn't have their full team where they needed to be. Plus, they are, a team that was in the thick of things last year. So to me, I'd probably put them 3, but then the other question is who you put 4, right? Because then if you're comparing Kiski and Canamac, well, Kiski beat Canamac, so should Kiski host it instead of Canamac? So that's where you have that battle back and forth, because that's the other part of it too, is it's not just the top, like 4 or 5, you could say it doesn't matter, but it does, because you're going to have home mat experience, the home mat level, which the Kiski area crowd can get pretty rowdy, and so can Canamac, right? So
not only can Kiski's crowd, their coaches can get a little rowdy, especially towards somebody by the name of Jeff Upson. Here's the thing. You had mentioned with all these results and Connellsville losing early, right? So Canamac, again, like this was so interesting seeing this in the first week. They lose to Norwin, and to be honest with you, Norwin just beat them in almost every position on Tuesday. On Thursday, they go and they beat Connellsville on alumni night in Connellsville, right? That to me was just like, what did we just see in the last 48 hours, right? It was incredible. Yep. But then you fast forward to a couple weeks, they go to Kiski area duels, and now you lose to North Allegheny, you lose to Kiski. Granted, they didn't have some guys that they should have had, and that's the other thing. Like, do you call a mulligan on that? Do you say, well, you know what, they should have beaten North Allegheny, they should have beaten Kiski area, but they didn't have their full lineup, so do we say that's a wash? Because then Collinsville comes back and they open up a can on Kiski, right? So they beat Kiski, and that was a couple weeks ago, right? That was on what date was that? That was January 15th. So yeah, that was 5 days ago. Collinsville beats them 47-22. I don't know necessarily how you look at that and you say, yeah, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I certainly don't envy the committee, although I went a little hard there on the committee not having wrestlebacks from the quarterfinals on. They're in a very precarious situation because either way you're pissing a team off. Either way you're pissing a team off that's already won, that's already beat a team and they're being seated below them. So, I tend to look at what's happened more recently, and I agree with you. Connellsville is a very different team than we saw on December 4th. And I think the results have spoken for themselves with that. So I'm okay with you saying, all right, Cannon Mac, you have 3 losses. Connellsville, when it comes to the WPIAL, you only have 1. So let's make them the 3 seed. I don't know. Again, I don't envy.
Well, then you throw in that wrinkle you mentioned too about North Allegheny, who beat Canamac as well. So
Right.
You have them throwing in that argument, right? Their only loss is to Kiski.
Yeah.
So now you have to wonder, okay, well, at this point then and this is how I probably would look at it. The Franklin Regional winners won, Franklin Regional or Norwin. Let's say Franklin Regional wins or 1, Nor wins 2, or vice versa, however that matchup goes. 3 goes to Connellsville, 4 goes to Kiski, but then who now is the 5? Is it Canamac or is it North Allegheny? Because North Allegheny beat Canamac.
Yeah.
So that could go 5, 6. And then you probably slide Trinity down to 7.
What about Trinity? Yeah, what about Trinity?
Well, then you put North Allegheny 5, you put Canamac 6, Trinity 7. But then the other wrinkle, like we talked about, is if Trinity wins this matchup, now they're probably the 2.
Yeah, if Trinity ends up beating Canamac, like I said, if Trinity beats Canamac, this is for sure. I would say Franklin Regional, Norwin 1 or 2, right? Regardless of what that is. Connellsville 3, Trinity 4. I mean, I don't. Right? Can you? If we're saying if Trinity beats Canamac, they've got to be top 4, and I don't think they're 3. I think they're 4 because I think Connellsville's better than them. And I think. I don't know. Would you say or no? Or would you say because Trinity beat Canamac and Canamac lost to Connellsville, or Canamac beat Connellsville, you're saying they should be 3?
Well, and here's the other thing is who else have they wrestled besides Franklin Regional, right? Trinity's doesn't have as many marquee matchups as Canamac has. So, I mean, that's the other argument too.
It's strength. Yeah, strength. You got to look at strength of schedule. You got to look at the strength of schedule. I will say Trinity beat. You look at who they beat, and they've beaten Cathedral Prep, Erie Cathedral Prep, that's a good team, right? Now they didn't have their full quote unquote lineup there, but outside of that, no, they have not wrestled anybody inside the state of Pennsylvania worth of note. Connellsville on the other hand, they wrestle St. Ed's. They have a pretty tough schedule. So you look at their losses.
If I'm picking a matchup, I'd pick Connellsville over Trinity. With that being said, how do you base it based off the wins and losses that you're seeing? When Trinity beats Canamac beat Connellsville. So that's the struggle. But hopefully it works itself out here tomorrow night. When you look at those top 2 teams, Jeff, Franklin Regional, Norwin, how do you see that one going down?
So I did the matchups before the Westmoreland County Tournament, and I did them afterwards. There's a lot of toss-up matches here. I look at a couple of these like 45, and I think both Kyle Martin and Matt Leby are going to try to do some shifting, but for the most part, I think they're only going to be doing so much shifting, right? At 107, Patero beat Colangelo already this year 5-3, but I still think that's a toss-up match. Bo Fennick is back. That to me is the biggest news for Franklin Regional. It's just a matter of how healthy is he, right? Regardless, he should get 6 for them, especially if he wrestles Alexander from Norwin. He should get 6 there. Sidon has already tech falled Titus Colangelo. He beat him 21-5 this year already, so I would give him another tech fall. They have a lot of flexibility between 27 and 39, and Norwin does. They have a lot of flexibility. You can put Colton Klippa at 27 or 33. You could put Cash Mitchell in at 33 or 27. You could put Brooks Blasco in at 33 or 39. There's a lot of flexibility there for them. You have the other Botero, who has beaten Bucaccioni. He has already beaten him 4-0 this year, so you probably want to get that matchup again. 45 to me is really a big one because you have Max Firestein and Nathan Klingensmith. Firestein beat him 4-1 in sudden victory. That's a toss-up match if I've ever seen one, right? Ruan and Curran, those two have wrestled twice. The last time they wrestled was 11-3. The time before that was 6-3. So if you get a major there over Noah Curran, that's pretty big, right? So if he can replicate that, I think White versus Perks is an interesting matchup. I also think Ethan Cartwright versus Riley Schaefer is a pretty big matchup. Cartwright beat him 4-0 this year. But again, I kind of think that's a toss-up. When you look at it, what it comes down to is 189, 215 at heavyweight. John Montgomery, whether he goes 215 or heavyweight, he has to get 6 for Franklin Regional, no doubt. But then you have McManus. You have, I don't know who they put at 215. Is it Corso? Is it, Franklin Regional put them down? Because Franklin Regional has 3 guys, or they have 3 weights, and Montgomery's the only one that I would say is a sure bet to win, right? McManus probably is favored over Schaefer at 89, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of this can go a lot of different ways for sure. I'm really excited about this. This is going to be a chess match between these two. It's going to be very exciting to see who wins the flip and what weight they start at, because there's going to be a lot of interesting matchups. And the good thing is a lot of these guys have seen each other before because they just wrestled at the Westmoreland County Tournament. So you have kind of a sense of like, all right, we can get that one back, or maybe we should avoid this matchup. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of jockeying and chess playing going on.
Yeah, it should be very interesting to see how it all plays out. And then at the end of the day, you like these two to be, at the very least, make sure they're on separate ends of the bracket come team tournament time. But as we discussed, 1 and 2 is not out of the question, without a doubt.
No, I definitely don't. I definitely don't think it's out of the question for these things.
You look at the other side, Jeff, in AA, and really, I think we've been talking all season long that there's a pretty clear top 3: Burrell, then Derry, and then McGuffey. Burrell and Derry should be a great matchup, but until Derry knocks him off, you got to give Burrell that top spot. So you look at those 3. From there, McGuffey's got a matchup with Chartiers Houston. Both teams are 2-0. You're here tomorrow night. But then you look at some other teams who are undefeated in their section. You got Burgestown. You have Jefferson Morgan, who had a close win over Bentworth. You have Laurel. You have Central Valley and Freedom going to wrestle each other. I mean, there's a lot of teams in that 4, 5, 6, 7 mix that would be interesting to see where they get placed.
I like the way Jefferson Morgan's wrestling right now. They're undefeated on the season. They're 10-0 on the season. They had that close win over Bentworth, with Bentworth is a solid team. Laurel is the other one. Laurel's had some guys wrestle a little bit better than maybe what was expected. They're 13-3 on the season. So, I agree with you where the first 3 are pretty set. Laurel lost to Derry 54-12 this year. They lost to Greenville at a District 10, and they lost to West Allegheny. That's it. But they have some other good wins, right? So they beat Quaker Valley 48-21. They beat Best Center 42-32. So I mean they're tested, right? They're battle tested in that sense. I think outside of the three that we had mentioned. I think really it's going to come down to a Laurel or Jefferson Morgan as the fourth, and then Burgettstown, they just haven't wrestled anybody. That's the problem, is they just haven't wrestled anybody. They've only wrestled Avella and Southside Beaver. That's it, right? So, it's how do you that's a really tough to seed. How can you say we're going to seed them a certain way and they only have 2-3 dual meets under the belt? So, I would assume that it's probably going to be a Derry, Burrow, McGuffey in whatever order you say, then a Jefferson Morgan and a Laurel probably in that 4 or 5 is what I would say.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think out of the ones we mentioned, those two have really kind of stuck their heads out a bit in regards to getting that next spot. Be interested to see who gets that home matchup as the 4, whether it's Jefferson Morgan or Laurel, because they're in two opposite sides of the Pittsburgh area.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are.
So we'll see who ends up winning that opportunity to be the home team for the 4 spot. But should be a lot of fun, a lot of great matchups coming up tomorrow, and then the brackets will come out Thursday, and then a lot of great dual wrestling coming next week. But also some really great wrestling coming this weekend, Jeff. You mentioned in the beginning several of these tournaments were being streamed here on Rockfin and PA Power. Let's look at the first one with the Coal Cracker tournament. We've been talking a lot about Cannon Mac, and they will be there at the Coal Cracker tournament.
Yeah, the Coal Crackers, it's a deep tournament. Tim Robb's done a really good job over the last couple of years to getting some of the best competition in there. Most notably, Faith Christian Academy is going to be there. There's some really good teams. There's a lot of really good individuals there. Central Dolphins there as well. So shout out Jeff Swigert and the Central Dolphin Rams. But there's definitely some good competition. Cannon Mac was there last year. Got to see some guys that they probably typically would not get to see. So I like that fact that you get to expand your horizons a little bit, right? Because it's kind of boring wrestling the same 2 or 3 guys that you see all the time. So I think there's 58 teams at the Coal Cracker this year. Faith Christian's the biggest one, but there's a lot of really solid teams, mainly from the out east, but kind of sprinkled in all over. Montgomery's there. There's some solid squads there. So looking forward to seeing Cannon Mac there.
Yeah, the only WPIAL team will be Cannon Mac at that tournament. The Fred Bell tournament, it's at Grove City, and there's a lot of WPIAL schools participating there. Most notably, you have Kiski area, who will be there, as well as McGuffey on the AA side. You have Trinity as well, that'll be there. So, but of several, Bell Vernon will be there, among others, for the WPIAL.
Yeah, and again, we're excited. We're excited about the Fred Bell up at Grove City. They do a really good job. Coach Wes Phipps and his staff up there and the boosters. I mean, the Grove City, they've got a rabid fan base. I really like their folks up there. And the Fred Bell is just continuing to get better and better and better. So it's exciting to see that. And it's nice to have that WPIAL influence in there. So definitely looking forward to seeing some of those guys. Like you said, Trinity. It's going to be fun.
Then you also have the Thomas Automotive Tournament over at Bedford. That's where you see Burrell there, and Chestnut Ridge will be there too. We'll see if we'll see Cam Baker and Dom Deputy go at it again. As far as that particular individual matchup, but Burrell among Best Center is there for the WPIAL. West Green, so a few more AA schools, but WPIAL represented here as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Dom's going to have another where he loses to Mac Dingus at Power and then comes back and majors as him. Did he need to have a fire lit under him? I don't know, but I'd definitely like to see it again because they're 1-1 on the year now.
And then you also have the Ultimate Warrior Tournament at West Branch. Again, more WPIAL schools will be wrestling there. Couple will be Bentworth will be there for the WPIAL, as well as Derry, just to name a couple schools heading that way.
Yeah, and I'll physically be there. That's going to be another good tournament, and that's one that I feel like always ends on a high note. at West Branch High School. And I love the fact that Derry comes. They're one of the best teams in the state, and they have just a good cast of really good wrestlers. Not sure necessarily if we're going to see Brady Brown or not. He hasn't wrestled. I think he hasn't wrestled since the Panther Holiday back in December or after Powerade, because he definitely didn't wrestle in the county tournament. So, but Mason Horwath as well. I mean, and all their freshmen. So excited to see them going up there and wrestling with some of the best competition in the state.
And then you have some duels coming up as well, the Valley duels as well as the Sharon duels. Mentioned Burgestown not having a lot of duel matchups. They'll be there in Chartiers, Houston, and Freedom, Jefferson, Morgan. So be a good mix of those AA schools that we talked about that are in that 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 type range, going to the Sharon duels and giving us a little preview before the team tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and quite frankly, they need that, right? They need that for a variety of reasons, to kind of see where they're at and where they're heading. So, I had to mention we just dropped our digital copy of Pennsylvania Wrestling News Magazine, and the reason I wanted to bring it up is because we have a WPIAL wrestler Landon Sidden on the cover this issue. This is our third issue of the season. This is our January edition, and we've got coverage from all 12 districts in the PIAA. We also have coverage of the girls statewide, and we also have Division 1, NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, as well as some really good opinion pieces. Tom Elling, just a wealth of knowledge, and I really, anytime he talks or anytime he writes something, I have to slow down and read it a few times or listen really intently, because he's a wealth of knowledge. And he wrote a pretty nice opinion piece on the forfeit problem, and how we reduce that. But yeah, so Landon Sidden on the cover, Powerade champion of PWN, Pennsylvania Wrestling News Magazine. Subscriptions are available. You can get a physical copy or you can get a digital copy, and it's very reasonably priced. I mean, a digital copy is $25 for 6 issues. That's pretty darn cheap. We actually lose money on printing to have the because they get a print copy, it's $35. That's basically a wash for us. But yeah, we're excited about the magazine and excited to highlight all the good wrestling going on across the Keystone State.
And there's going to be a lot of great wrestling coming up here tomorrow night with a lot of the duels. And then obviously this weekend with a lot of good tournaments happening as a preview. And then we really get into it, right, Jeff? We have 2 weeks for the WPIAL and then the state team tournament. And then we get into the best part of the season, right, as far as the individual postseason. 4 weeks of just gauntlet of wrestling coming up. So really this is that final stretch, the final week, final tune-up per se, before we get into the stretch of those 6 weeks. And it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and for the teams, it's the road to Johnstown. It's the road to Johnstown. This just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? The road to Johnstown.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. You're not biting into Hershey bars anymore when you win
you're
team.
I don't know what the heck you're doing for Johnstown. Yeah, I don't know. It's slightly depressing, but hey,
yeah.
on the War Memorial, we're storming the War Memorial. There you go.
Well, we'll be great to see who gets to head that way as far as from the WPIAL, and should have a lot of great action. For Jeff Upson, I'm Greg Warnock. We appreciate you listening in to War Up on the WPIAL.